By the way, I am digging this blue light in my bedroom. I think I'm going to do the rest of the vlogs this way, at least for season 3. So we have Intensity, Intensity, season 3, episode 6. And by the way, I have like a relaxing choir music playing in the background. So if you hear that in this video, that's what you're listening to. So it opens up. Actually, it opens up quite intensely, believe it or not. You know, I didn't know what I was looking at first. You're seeing the camera go, and I think this is actually in the future of what's going to happen. Like, you see this point of view going around on the ground, and I don't know what it is, and I see, like, the disciples are sleeping. And once it gets to Simon, it goes past him, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then it cuts. It's the snake. It's the point of view of Satan slithering around on the ground. And then it cuts back to the point of view of the snake coming up. And you see Jesus' back, and he turns around like with tears coming down his eyes. Not worried, but not afraid, but just like, you know, like just the grief of what's coming. And then, bam, Claudia wakes up from a dream that she had. And I saw that, and I'm like, this show's good. This is good. This is getting really good. So, we see Claudia for the first time. And so I knew it was Claudia right away, because I'd never seen this actress before in the show, and she's surrounded by red drapes, everything. So I'm like, okay, it's got to be Claudia. It has to be. And then we see Pilate for the first time, Pontius Pilate, and yeah, he's a bit of a kid here. I wasn't expecting that, because most of the time we see Pontius Pilate, he's usually in his, like, what, 40s or 50s? I mean, I think of Jesus of Nazareth, you know, from the 70s. I think Rod Steiger played him, and he was, like, in his 50s there, I think. But this guy, I think he's my age. The guy that plays him, I don't know his name, but yeah, the first time we ever see Pontius Pilate, I mean, he's got to be in his mid-20s or early 30s or something. I mean, he's young. And so we see him, and we just get this vibe as an audience that you could just feel that Satan has overcome this guy's heart. Like, he's putting, like, his stuff, like, he's having a conversation with Claudia, and he puts on, like, his Roman garb and stuff, and he has this bronze serpent that he puts on his wrist, and even as he's putting it on, you hear, like, this weird kind of music go over it, almost like a hissing sound, and Claudia looks at that, and remembering her dream, and oh man, it's quite a scene to watch, especially if you know the story, you know. So that's going on, and then I forget how this happens in order, but basically what happens is Andrew and Philip are woken up in the middle of the night by Leander. And it turns out that when Andrew and Philip went out to preach, the Decapolis found out about it, and the word that they were preaching went all over the place, and now there's, like, so much turmoil going on between the Greeks and the Gentiles and the Jews. There's, like, so much going on, and it wasn't Andrew and Philip's intention, but that's what happened. Because when they preached to the Jews that heard it, they went out and started talking about this. So now it's all over the place, and now people don't know what to make of this, and it's not looking good. So they decide, well, okay, we have to go out and see what's going on here, or we got to talk to Jesus about this and do something about it. So that's going on. And then we have Atticus, who we know about him. He decides to go talk to Pilate. He has a conversation with Pilate about Quintus and his role in all of this in Capernaum, and also about Jesus of Nazareth. They're talking about that a little bit. So I'm like, this has got to be building up to something. I mean, like, we know what it's building up to eventually, but what's it building up to with what the Chosen's going to do with it? You know what I mean? Because we know, the one thing we know about the Chosen is that even though we know how this story is going to end, what we're interested in is seeing, when they put their spin on it, what's it going to be that's going to make it interesting? You know what I mean? Like, okay, like, it's a television show. It's not scripture. They're taking things from scripture, but it's not, this show is not scripture. But it's interesting to see how we get there with their interpretation of it. It's interesting. Which is why I think the show is a global phenomenon. But it still isn't scripture. We have to remember that. But anyway, so that's going on. And then we have, I think, the big scene in this, which is when Jesus, and of course this is in the Gospels, where two of the followers of John the Baptist find Jesus, and they ask him, are you really the Messiah, or is there someone coming after you? Like, should we wait for someone else? And Jesus said something that I thought was interesting. I don't know if this is in the Gospels or not, but Jonathan Rumi says something as Jesus in this episode that I thought was very interesting, and I never thought of it in this way. He goes, my cousin, John the Baptist, it is said in the Gospels that John the Baptist is supposed to pave the way for Jesus. Make straight the way for the King. He is coming. He's here to awaken the earth. And that's exactly what he's doing. But now he's in prison. Herod put him in prison for what he did. And it's not really what he did, but what he said. And even though John the Baptist isn't wrong, he knew what he was getting himself into. And because he's in prison, John even had some questions too. And Jesus says, my cousin, who was supposed to pave the way for me, is now becoming impatient. Now, first of all, think of that. And I thought, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, the one that was supposed to make the way for the Messiah is now growing impatient. But here's the thing. We already knew this back in season 2. When he says that, when they have that conversation by the stream about John, growing impatient. I'm just impatient. Like, when are you going to start doing this with your ministry? You're taking your time. Why are you doing this? And Jesus is like, I'm planning on something, a sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. But he's in prison, and the two of his disciples are asking Jesus, should we wait for someone else? And, he tells them what is said in the Gospels. Go back and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind can see, the lame can walk. How happy are those who have no doubts about me. So that happens. And then we have the big scene at the end that I was waiting for. Eden tells Simon about her miscarriage. And I don't want to ruin that scene for you, but it is... Shahar Isaac and Lara Silva, they have such good chemistry together. They are so good in these roles. I love I just love every time they're on screen. The two of them, it's just, oh man, it's just so good. It's so good. All the actors in this show are just so great. But that's how it ends. And also, there's also another thing that goes on throughout this show, or throughout this episode. So Z, Simon the Zealot, they all call him Z. He is having some problems with some of his former zealot friends. Simon is leaving. That's not him anymore. He's now following Christ. He's a disciple of Christ. He's not what he was. And he tells them this. They have this scene where he's telling them, like, this is not who I am. I'm not doing this anymore. And they don't believe him. They're like, this is the Messiah? The Messiah's gonna... This is it? This is the one? And then, after Jesus has this whole scene about who he is and everything, the zealots are there in the crowd, and they hear it, and they can't believe it either. It's really a powerful scene, really powerful, but really great episode. There's a lot going on, a lot of build-up, especially considering we only have 2 more episodes left in this season, and you wonder where it's all going to build up to, because now Simon is aware of Eden's miscarriage, and what does that say about him? What does it say about, like, his marriage, and why did this happen? How could this have happened? And Eden's having trouble with it because, Veronica was cleansed of being unclean, and Eden is now unclean, but she's not healed. She doesn't know why. And Simon's having a hard time understanding, well, why can't Jesus heal both of us? Why? Why can't he do it? And they're just grieving, and that's pretty much where it ends, where that episode ends. So that's pretty much, that's Intensity, Intense City. Clever title, by the way. Really clever title. Yeah, so that's season 3, episode 6, and where do we go in the next one? I'll let you know.